somebody from the back of the room, please.
My name is Requisition. I'd like to know your stance on the fact that recently long-term sick and disabled people residing on the Isle of Man have had to go through work capability and other assessments carried out at a significant but undisclosed cost by two companies who were unqualified to do that testing. And if elected, what will you do to ensure that people who are unable to work owing to long-term illness or disability are properly supported and cared for by our community?
It's a very good question, and one that is very prevalent. Obviously that was related specifically 2 years ago to dependability. They were paid $750,000. Actually, they're paid probably more than that, but it's not been disclosed, to carry out tests on people who were claiming long-term sickness benefits. And part of these tests was to go around to see whether they were actually long-term sick or whether they needed help to actually, if they needed help, or not so if they could actually have that benefit removed. So what we've seen is a reduction in benefits to people in this situation. Often a lot of people will find they work very hard and they have a perception that sometimes, and there are obviously people that are misusing the system. But then we have the other side where there are people that have worked, and you can look at, I don't know whether the government really doesn't look at sort of NI contributions, and they can see they've worked for 40 years or longer in this case, and they can see that obviously they've come to a situation where, I mean, if they've contributed that much, then surely they should be entitled then to be looked after. How do we look after the people that fall into these situations, and do we do it rightly? So the government's sort of view was a very sort of impersonal one, and this is often the case we see with the great degree of insensitivity, where there's a problem, and this is sort of problem that's gone over for quite a long time, and there never seems to be a sort of real solution in how we're going to change this sort of I think perception, or not so much perception, but the problem with people that are in these situations and people that misuse it. So I mean, clearly we have to look after the people that have contributed and worked. I mean, and we can see that very clearly. So the government, when they're carrying out these tests, should have really gone around and said, well, this person, you know, I mean, if they're elderly and they're not actually going to work again anyway, and they made a large contribution, so cutting back wouldn't sort of provide any possible way of helping them, and sometimes places them in situations of poverty, or already difficult situations. Then we have, of course, the other side, which is how do we find out the people that possibly might be abusing the system. And clearly, at the moment, I think that sort of involves a different sort of way of dealing with the problem. So actually, you have to go in and actually sort of talk to these people, and I mean, or bring these people, some of them in the sense if they are sort of in doubt, and they have to have conversations with them, possibly in sort of community centre, one day over long term, and then you can sort of begin to assess. And if you're doing this over a period of time, you'll get an idea if someone isn't, you know, is truly not able to work, or is in fact actually, I suppose, misappropriating government money. And we have to, I think it's very important that we engage in a lot of these sort of difficult areas. And government policy, what fails is sort of endemic, is they don't actually engage. So if you've got something that's slightly tricky, it's sort of like, oh, well, forget that, and we know it goes on. But there are, not just this, there's many also things that go around the side here. So I do think we have to have people that sort of go in and actually sort of start having a conversation with them and trying to find ways to find out exactly what's going on, and how they can then help them if it's necessary or not.
I'll be the first person to say that this issue has not been well handled. The firm involved, dependability, I think, has let down both the taxpayer, the government, and those people that the government is trying to help. It's never going to be easy to make people think differently about their personal circumstances, especially if they've been in those circumstances for a long time. But if people can work, they should work, and this needs to be done sensitively. It's critical that we protect the vulnerable, and the presumption should always be on the side of care and on the side of providing protection for the individual. I don't think there are a big number of people out there who are milking the system, but I do believe it's important that there is a medical assessment periodically of those who are on variable medical conditions, not those who have only got a one-way track of their conditions, but those whose conditions vary, so that they can be reassessed, because studies do show that it's better for their mental health and physical health if they are back in work. It improves their social mobility as well as their actual mobility. The question you asked for, what would I do if I was back in? Well, the first one is about making sure that there's an income support substitute for those people who are close to retirement, so that they are not pushed back into work in their mid-60s. The other one is about restoring the personal allowance credit for those people who are working age, because it was taken away from those who are working age and given only to pensioners. But for those who are working age, long-term sick, that's a big difference to them. And again, I would support the introduction of the personal allowance credit on that basis. So those would be the two things that I would do in order to make sure that we improve the situation going forward. But I think we need to still do those periodic assessments, but I think it could be done far more sensitively, and dependability will let a lot of people down.
Absolutely agree with June there with regards to dependability. That has been let down without a doubt. But I think the question really hits at the heart of, do we protect the vulnerable? And it's a good challenging question under these particular circumstances. I think that the government now needs to move on from that on the basis of, we need to enable the vulnerable where we possibly can. And through certain assessments that are done appropriately, sensitively, that can actually work. What I can tell you, and I don't think it is a published figure, because a lot of those people who are capable and able to work have actually gone on to job seekers allowance. And since that system started, there's well over 100 people that have actually gained employment. Now, they've gained employment because there's been various different schemes that are available with, sits right in my department, economic development, with regards to employment and skills, where we can train, retrain, work with placements, and allow people opportunity to have flexible options for going back to work. So we are trying to get people into work where we possibly can, because clearly, if you're in work, it's meaningful, and it really gives you, I think, it gives the individual something that they can really believe in themselves and have the confidence, because there's lots and lots of reasons why people are out of work, and medical is one of them. And it may not be physical, it may be mental as well, and that's something we need to be exceedingly sensitive about. And we do have specialist officers who can actually liaise and work with people. And one of those industries, I will say, that's very, very good, particularly with autistic, Asperger's, and various things of that particular nature, where it's hard to get regular jobs, as we might regard it, is in the area of IT. And there are great, I can tell you several personal examples I know of, that people have now got meaningful jobs and are really contributing to the social welfare of themselves and the Isle of Man. Thank you very much.
Two government ministers have acknowledged that it's been shown how not to do it. So there is a broader debate which should be had about the idea of a basic, universal basic income, but only in 3 minutes, so we'll concentrate on where I think it went wrong. Fundamentally, it went wrong with a lack of sensitivity, a lack of personal. And we think about it: who is it that signs you off? It's a doctor. Who is it that should sign you back on? A doctor. Now, why aren't you being signed back on by a doctor? Because your health service is being slashed. Something I learned only by standing. One of my neighbours is a GP. Your local GP, the list of people that they have to look after is longer than it is in the UK. And they are being put under so much pressure that it's physically, it's basically coming to the point of a breaking point. Now, who do you want your GP to be? Your GP should be somebody who is in your community, who is of your community, who you know, not somebody who has 5 minutes to talk about one problem. That's where we're at. Now, if that GP is in your community and knows your community, they are the best person to assess whether you are fit to work, whether you are fit to try and find another way of working, but they can't do any of that stuff, which is the essence of community, if they've only got 5 minutes for one problem. Personally, I would suggest that we need to rethink the whole thing, because we are talking about medical problems, and those medical problems can only be really discussed by a medical person. But that is going to take a complete rethinking of the whole thing. And the problem is that everybody wants to live in a society where there is a safety net. Nobody wants a society where that safety net becomes a hammock. And that leads to a toxic situation where we can't talk about the taxes which pay for that. So you're in this vicious circle. But for me, the key is with GPs. You know, from talking to the GPs here in RUSHEN, they are basically at breaking point. So we can't ask them to do any more. There was a very interesting little piece today on Manx Radio. Malcolm Couch said that there should be an ongoing debate with the public about the cost of public services. Brilliant. There's the head civil servant, and civil servants often get hacked about this, but there was the top civil servant in this area saying exactly what should be said. The cost of this should be discussed with you in an honest way. This is what this costs, and this is the most humane way to deal with this. But it's not going to happen unless that debate happens.
I think this is a great question, and I think it's been a hot topic. Hang on, are you playing Great Question Bingo there? Yeah, fantastic. Love it. It's all right. Okay, so, but it is. It's a great question, because it is another hot topic, isn't it? Now, if we think about it, people were getting asked questions such as, can you pick up a pound coin? What sort of a question is that? Now, I don't know specifically who's getting asked these questions, people with bad back, whether it's people with mental health, I don't know, but do you know what? That's going to stress you immediately, isn't it? And of course, the question normally is, yes, I can pick up a pound coin. So that's just preposterous. So we know that this whole thing with dependability and so on is a hotly debated topic. In fact, it's not even hotly debated. I think most of us agree that the government have really, really let us down over it. Sorry, guys, but I don't feel you've fought hard enough for us. All ministers, I don't feel have fought hard enough on this issue, with the exception of just a few. Okay, now, I don't believe in means testing when it comes to things like this. I certainly don't. I do think that in terms of what we do to support those with health problems, disabled and so on, I think things like more community nurses would be a good idea, plus paying them more. Our community nurses get next to nothing for what they do, and they do an absolutely tremendous job. Fantastic job. Now, going back to these questions that people were getting asked, you look at me, and yes, I know I'm a little bit chunky these days, but I used to play rugby and I used to do powerlifting. Now I just coach Southern Nomads. But if you see me walking up and down stairs here, walking along, you wouldn't actually realise that what I need to get around, because I need a knee replacement, I need a knee brace. So I wear it when I'm going around canvassing, because it gets me around. But I could guarantee you that somebody that saw me walking, such as now, without it, would say, you don't need a knee replacement. And that's how this whole dependability thing's been handled. It's appalling. You know how sore you are. You know how much pain you're in. Now, there are other things we can do as regards people with health problems. We can introduce a bigger bank of physios. We can educate people more on their health, get them up and around and moving. But we do need to invest in all of this, don't we? Now, I'm not going to harp on about the budget again. You know my thoughts on this. We revamped the budget. We've got money to actually afford these things, these positive things that will help the disabled and those with mental health problems. I actually feel government reform is needed, because I really do think that the MLCs have let us down by blocking things left and right. There was been mentioned by people about, some of the guys here, about, that's just throwing me there, about those who might abuse the system. Well, why don't we actually have a better system of actually logging what's wrong with someone in the first place and make it more accessible. And of course, for those at the lower end of the scale, let's have more frequent health visits where we can reassess people. But let's not put them under the microscope and scrutinise people. As I said, you might not always see that somebody has a genuine health problem.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.